is Nick Tulloch, the CEO of Mendell Helium, after the company released an operations update regarding its M3 helium activities in Kansas. Well, Nick, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, pleasure, Mark. I'm very well, and hopefully you are as well.
Indeed I am. So thanks very much for joining us to go through this pretty comprehensive update. So first of all, the main point of the news, I think, or the update was the option to acquire has been extended now until the 30th of June, which you say is aligning with the expected start of the production at the Rost well. So could you just walk us through some of the rationale behind having to, or the decision to extend this deadline?
Yeah, of course. We've been a little bit quiet for the last couple of months, but it's not that we've not been busy, and hopefully today's announcement shows that there's been a fair amount of activity. Really, it's the Rost well in our Fort Dodge property that's what's really holding all of these different events in the same place. Rost is a well that is 5.1% helium, very high pressure, and as you can see from the announcement, we've got very high expectations of it. The likelihood is it'll take us another couple of months to get that into production. And the smart move, therefore, is to bring the option to acquire M3 in line with that. Now, I'm Chief Executive of Mendell Helium. I'm also Chairman of M3. We've been running the two companies as one economic unit. But in order to complete the transaction where we acquire M3 as a wholly owned subsidiary of Mendell, we have to publish an admission document. And as everyone will know, that's a quite an involved process that will involve lawyers, accountants, our corporate advisor. The smart move was to do that in line with the production on Rost, and I'd say that's around about 2 months. So moving that acquisition of M3 out to the end of June more or less brings everything in line. So that's the main rationale.
Okay. So it's to get the Rost well online. So this will also impact the readmission to Aquis, the reverse takeover, all of that. That will be pushed back a little bit, will it?
Yeah, I mean, we're still trading on Aquis, and one of the nice things about Aquis is they're happy for us to carry on trading until such time as we publish an admission document. Every other exchange in the UK would have said, right, you're suspended. But in order to make the acquisition of M3, in order to bring it in as a subsidiary, we need to publish an admission document. And this is an important part of our corporate strategy, but it doesn't really stop us doing anything. We had a bit of restructuring behind the scenes of M3 a little while ago. I mentioned I'm on the board of M3. We're running the two companies essentially as one and the same economic unit in anticipation of the option. The option is a call option, so it's in Mendell Helium's gift at any time to call that option. We just choose not to because we'll publish the admission document when we're ready. And it would be nice to publish the admission document saying our Rost well, which has become the flagship project, is in production, and it will really change the entire shape and financial outlook of the company.
Okay, good. And I noticed as well that as well as the extension there with the time, you've renegotiated, I think, some of the terms as well, because you're originally going to make a $1 million payment by the end of March, but that's now been restructured. So it was 100,000 upfront and then 900 from Roswell proceeds, effectively 50% of the profits going to repay that. So again, what was the rationale behind that? Was the 1 million a bit of a stretch for you at the moment to make, or is it just a more smart way to do it?
It's certainly a smart way to do it, and it's bringing our two project areas in line. So we've always said the Hugoton is the opportunity for real scale of this company. And the Hugoton is a gas field. It's been around for 90 years. It stretches from Kansas all the way through to Texas, whereas where Rost is in Fort Dodge, around about 50 miles over to the east, that's a much smaller area. Now Rost is incredibly exciting, and the opportunity to drill offset wells from Rost equally exciting. But the long term, or the longevity of the wells in the Hugoton, will be over time what makes the company. Rost has captured everyone's imagination. I mean, why would it not? With the helium composition, with the pressure, with the ability to produce very high quantities, and we already have a PSA on site to purify the helium as it's produced. It's captured the imagination of Scout. Scout are these. I know that they're not a household name in the UK, but they are the single biggest operator in our part of Kansas. They're the second biggest producer of helium in the United States, and they want to be part of Rost. So we've agreed a helium offload agreement, meaning we essentially produce the helium, we truck it to one of Scout's facilities, offload the helium, and they will buy 100% of whatever Rost can produce. And we think Rost can produce a fair bit. The interest in that deal from their point of view also gave us the ability to talk about how we would structure the farm-in, which is now over the Hugoton. As you say, we owe $1 million, or we will owe $1 million when the farm-in starts. And what we've been able to do is agree with Scout that we will reduce that million to $100,000 up front. And the balance, the 900,000, will be paid for by Rost. This is, for me, a really extraordinary opportunity. Essentially, the farming has become almost self-funding. So we produce helium from Rost, we sell that to Scout, they pay us, we return that money to them, or return part of that money to them, in order to complete our Hugoton farm-in. So the whole transaction of the Hugoton is exactly the same as it was. Well, actually, there's a few other benefits that we have, but we still have the ability to drill wells over the same acreage. But now 90% of the cost is going to be covered by Scout themselves. So for a little company like us to have a deal like that with a company of their size, this is sort of lots of Christmases all rolled into one.
And I mean, how long would you expect it to take for that to be repaid, or is there a time limit? Is there a terms sheet that says it has to be done in X amount of time?
There is not. The expectation is from Scout and actually from ourselves is that Rost will produce very, very quickly. Now, we've put some fairly conservative numbers out. We've previously talked about Rost being capable of doing a little more than $100,000 per month in revenue. Now, that's going to be better for a start because the helium price we agreed with Scout is some 17% better than we'd modelled originally. And again, that's just a factor of Scout being interested and being part of the Rost opportunity. The model we put together originally also assumes that we choke the well back. I say this is a high pressure well. What we've assumed is that we're not going to, it's like you don't drive your car at 90 miles an hour all day, every day. We've assumed we'll be driving more pedestrian 20 miles an hour. And that's what the original forecasts that we illustrated in previous RNSs and repeated in today's RNS indicate. There is an opportunity as that well matures to increase, basically open the choke and produce more gas. I would rather say let's just go slow and steady. Let's just make sure we've got a steady flow of gas, a steady production of helium, and then let's see how we go. But we know this is a well that's got a huge amount of pressure and a huge amount of opportunity. So Scout's expectation is that we will run the well probably a whole lot faster than we've been saying to the market. But let's see. Let's be conservative. For a company like us to do $100,000 a month or a little bit more, that's pretty extraordinary. That's all the G&A covered, and then some.
Sure, indeed. And you mentioned earlier, of course, you've got the offload agreement already in place there, where you can truck the helium to one of their gathering points. So what's left to sort of finalise this well before production begins?
So three main things. We need a disposal well. We know that Rost is going to produce a lot of water. Now, this is good and bad. The fact there's a lot of water, but there's still high pressure, just tells you what's going on underneath the ground. We need a bigger pump as well. And I mentioned there's a PSA on site. The PSA is what's used to purify the helium. That all needs to be connected up. And then a small point is we'll need a couple of tube trailers to deliver the helium, but those are fairly readily available. So we're factoring in around about 2 months' work to do all of that. Most of it's about installing a bigger pump and drilling the disposal well, or completing the disposal well. And then thereafter, it's a case of connecting up the PSA, getting a compressor on site so we can load up the tube trailers. Okay. And we believe it's around about a 2-month job, and that's. Again, that links back into why we've extended the option to the end of June.
Okay, and everything's looking like it's sorted, is it, Nick? You're happy that the team or the things you put in place will meet that all in 2 months' time, so the lead orders and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we are. We've done an awful lot of work in preparing this, and I think probably the last sort of building block that needed to be put in place was that offload agreement. We had a couple of people interested. It makes a lot of sense to go with Scout, given our ongoing relationship with them. The pricing and the terms I've just spoken about for the farming agreement are really, truly very, very compelling. And so getting that in place means we're ready to go. It would be pretty careless, I think, to drill a well, not really quite knowing what you're going to do with the produce. It's like growing a crop and not knowing how you're going to harvest it. So we know now that 100% of what we produce will be sold. It will be offloaded into Scout's facility. We have pricing agreed. We have terms agreed. And that was really the last block we wanted to put in place before we start spending the money to get Rost into production. Sure. It's just been a responsible operator.
Good. And just a couple of other points, Nick. You mentioned disposal wells there, and that was also included in the update here, that as part of the original agreement, you needed to drill 25 wells, I think, for helium, but now that can include disposal wells. So can you just explain, well, first of all, what are disposal wells, and how has this changed? 'Cause if you've got to drill a lot less helium wells, presumably that's better for the economics.
Much better. So a disposal well is water. Kansas allows you to re-inject water back into the ground. If you drill a 3,000 foot well, you can put 500 barrels per day in. 4,000 foot, you can put 3,000 barrels per day in. Now, in our modelling in the Hugoton, we have assumed that we will need a disposal well for every 2 to 3 wells that we drill. So a 25 production well program is looking like something, somewhere in the mid-30s in terms of number of wells. If now, and we can, include the disposal wells as part of that 25, now we're looking at only needing to drill around about 18 wells, or maybe less. That doesn't change our ambition. This just changes the minimum,
Sure.
spend we have to put in place. So the economics, as you say, have considerably improved. If we can add in the disposal wells to reach that 25, as a little sort of cherry on top of that icing, if Scout use our disposal wells themselves, and they might, we can charge them for that as well. So
Okay.
this would only be a very small income, but it's a nice touch from Scout to say, look, if you drill a disposal well and we use it, we will pay for it just as you would use, just as you would pay for using one of our disposal wells. So again, just a nice feature and just a further illustration of the strength of the relationship between the two companies. I know this is a David and Goliath fight, but the fact that we're able to have these arrangements with Scout is I think still truly extraordinary for a company of our size.
Indeed. And do you know how much it costs to drill the wells, Nick? I mean, to just forward thinking what it might involve.
Yeah, we've been quoting around about sort of $425,000 to $450,000 per well, and around about $150,000 for a disposal well. I mean, it's going to ebb and flow per well, but the main determining factor is the size of the frac that you put on the well.
Sure.
And the numbers I just gave you assume that we do a Nielsen style frac. We have looked at bigger fracs as well. That would push the cost up slightly, but it would also push, we believe, the production up considerably. So it means that's sort of a rough cost in terms of producing the wells.
And the plan would be to fund them through cash flow, ideally.
It would, absolutely. And again, we sort of turn our attention back to Rost, which is capable of very fast and very high production, and the area that Rost is in is capable of hosting other wells. Now, whereas the Hugoton, we talk in terms of hundreds, in Fort Dodge where Rost is, we talk in far smaller numbers. But even if one well can attract this amount of attention and give us this amount of leverage into a farm-in with Scout, you tempt to say, well, what could 2 wells or 3 wells or 6 wells do? This is the opportunity for Mendell going forward.
Good. And I noticed the update as well talked about the Hugoton effectively being worth over $8 million there, and effectively you've got this for an eighth of that cost that value. So I mean, this deal sounds like it's very good for you and perhaps not so good for Scouts, but I don't know.
Well, I think it's good for both of us actually. The $8 million that comes from if we were to find a prospective piece of land and take an oil and gas lease over it, we would probably expect to be paying around about $50 per acre. The $161,000, that's where we get the $8 million from. So if we had no relationship with Scout and just turned up and said, look, can we lease some of your land? That's roughly what the market price is. As you say, we're paying $1 million, except we're not. We're paying $100,000. The $900,000 has been funded by Scout. So, on the one hand, you could say we've got an $8 million opportunity for $1 million, or you could say we've got an $8 million opportunity for $100,000. I suppose it depends on your level of optimism, but we're very pleased. It's a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sure you are pleased. Yeah, so I guess the plan is to get that Roswell going and then effectively get that into production and look to build from there. I noticed that there was another quite intriguing part to this update, which was using some of the excess methane to help power mining for cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So I mean, this is a bit left field. Just give us a bit of rationale behind this.
Well, we like to show that we're quite creative thinkers, and we're always looking to get the best value out of what we do. Methane at Rost will be essentially a waste product. Rost is not on a pipeline in the way that the Hugoton is. It's economic to put the helium in a truck or a tube trailer and take it to a gathering point. It's just not economic to do that with the methane. So we have a waste product that needs to be dealt with. what better way to deal with that waste product than to explore to use it to run a generator? That generator can run a computer, and that computer can mine for Bitcoin. Now, I've never done this before, so this will be a first for me. We will not be the first company looking to do this, but if we have this waste product that is capable of powering a generator, let's think about what can be done. We'll need to look at the methane compositions. We'll need to look at, obviously, the economics. We're in the business of producing helium. We're not in the business of producing Bitcoin. If we can put something together fairly cost effectively, and the initial numbers, by the way, shows that it would pay back a little over a year. Now, there's going to be variation based on Bitcoin pricing. There'll be no variation based on power because we're producing that ourselves. But the nice thing about Rost is it sits on a main road. I mean, literally, the well is about 35 meters off the main road. So communications are terrific. If you're mining for Bitcoin, it's not enough just to have power. You've got to have a facility where the generator and the computer will sit. And this is not a small laptop. This is quite a big piece of equipment. And you need communications as well. Well, main road with telephone lines going right across it, gives us that communication. So, I don't want the world to say, right, Mendell's going into Bitcoin. This is all about Bitcoin. This is a nice little add-on.
Okay.
And we were keen to put it in the announcement because it demonstrates that we're thinking about ways to use our waste product, thinking about ways to add a little bit of extra value. I don't think, unless Bitcoin absolutely goes to the moon, I don't think that this particular add-on will be that material compared to Rost. But quite nice. Again, it will cover some of the costs. So, sensible thing to do.
Okay, good. And finally, I know there's a lot to catch up on this update, but I want to just touch on Alex Clem. He was a former operations engineer, senior operations engineer at Scout Energy. He's joined the team as a chief engineering officer, and he says you're going to be paid from the profits or the revenue from Rost. So, I mean, what's attracted him to this? Why does he want to come on board with you guys, and what will his remit be for Mendell?
So, I first met Alex in the summer of last year. He was essentially running Scout's operations in Kansas. And so as part of our discussions around what we were doing, I got to know Alex. He left Scout a couple of weeks back, and I phoned him up and, just as you do, put it to him, say, well, why don't you come and work with us? You know the assets incredibly well. You know the area. He's a huge fan of Rost, and he thinks Rost is one of the best development opportunities he's ever seen. And it was probably about 2 to 3 days after we first had that conversation that he signed up. And so a lot of the recent developments, actually, Alex takes a huge amount of credit for. And having Alex as part of the team gives us so much more knowledge, much better connections, and not that our relationship with Scout was in any way bad, but an even better route into Scout. So I'm absolutely delighted he's joined. As I said, there's a lot to catch up on in the announcement. We've been quiet for a couple of months, but hopefully people can now see we've made progress on all fronts. And I keep saying, for a little company like us to attract the attention of Scout, that's extraordinary. For one of Scout's more senior engineers to say, I'm going to cross over and work for these guys because they've got something pretty special. He knows oil and gas and helium wells better than, frankly, any of us do. How extraordinary that he wants to join us. So we're really, really pleased. And as you say, he has put his money where his mouth is. He said to me in the first conversation, I think Rost is one of the best development opportunities I've seen. He is prepared to be paid based on what Rost produces. So that's his first job. His first job is to get Rost in production. His second job is to get Rost 2 and Rost 3 and Rost 4 identified and get those into production. That's the big opportunity for him and therefore also for us.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time and digesting that update with us today. Nick Tulloch, the CEO of Mendell Helium.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.